Look who's back. Yes, it's Marco, and we're walking on the cloud. There hasn't been a video like this for a long time. Unfortunately, we've had some very windy and weird weather. You can still hear probably some of the wind, and a lot of the videos that I did create with during these walks that I do were completely unusable. I've come up with this solution. I might make a video on how I made a very simple hack to my camera that it now sort of filters out some of the wind. I was working on a microphone with a recording solution, and then that microphone didn't work out. Had to send it back, and I need to pick up something more serious for the long run. But yeah, I'm back, and I think this one's gonna be usable. Hopefully it's usable. If it's not, well, you know, it is what it is. So what are we gonna talk about today? I wanted to take some of the recommendations on what people want to hear about, and I've been sort of delving into this topic in unposted videos and videos that I've tried to make. I've gone through a little bit of research, and two things have been sort of requested. Well, two people have requested basically the same thing, but it's about the Open Cloud Initiative and the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. Now, the Open Cloud Initiative, yeah, I really can't seem to find any more information on it other than it's a private company, a non-profit company registered in California. I honestly heard about it before, but never really delved into deep about who is partnering, who is doing anything with the Open Cloud Initiative. Now, the unfortunate lettering of Open Cloud Initiative kind of falls into the same space as Oracle Cloud Infrastructure or Open Container Initiative, right? And this is where the problem is. Okay, other than the naming aspects of it, the other big issue with Open Cloud is it's hard to get all the benefits of cloud when you're doing it on your own. And open essentially means infrastructure that, you know, is open source, or that is not where the features, where the backend is not hidden. We're not talking about infrastructure that's publicly documented on how to use it, like your public cloud, right? Your public cloud, all public cloud providers have a well-documented public API, but the backend is hidden. How do we design the storage? How do we design compute? What are the features of those units? Even as an authorized instructor, you don't get much information about that. You really need to be working for that project at the provider to be able to get very deep insight into how those features are built. And the Open Cloud Initiative talks about, all right, we're gonna open source the internals of the cloud. Now, if you want to open source the internals of the cloud, then you don't need an additional initiative because you do have Openstack. Openstack is your, well, they're sort of trying to say they're the open infrastructure project, but Openstack itself is a cloud computing solution that is completely open source, where you've got open sourced internals, a well-defined public API that's very usable, where a lot of projects have been created to well, programs, now they call them programs. They're still using the terminology from like 2014, because when you learn about it, it gets ingrained, I guess. And I'm not trying to say that there's anything bad about open source. I've been an active sort of member of the Openstack community since 2012. It's where I sort of first met with Openstack and have been teaching people how to use Openstack for years. Now I've mostly switched into consulting. I still am, you know, on the Openstack marketplace as a training company, but I'm sort of more moving away from that, because if you do want training on Openstack, you're going to go to one of the providers that's going to give you their software. Like, for example, you're going to use Red Hat's cloud, you're going to go to Red Hat for training, right? You're going to use Ubuntu cloud. Well, I don't know what their solutions are called, really, like, but yeah, when you decide to use one of the vendor-based solutions, you're going to go to their platform training. And vanilla training is like not really interesting anymore. So think about OpenStack is Linux, right? OpenStack is your platform, and it's developed through an open source project, just like the Linux kernel is developed through an open source project. And then vendors will come along and they'll pick up the code and they'll build a workable unit. Not that OpenStack itself from vanilla isn't usable, it's completely usable, but it will have features that are half developed, features that are poorly developed, features that don't work well. Whereas vendors will come along and polish those features out, right? OpenStack as a project basically lays out a roadmap, and then vendors work on that roadmap and improve it, and they commit stuff back to it. But you know, those things take time, right? Commits back to the open source community take time. Now, good thing about open source programs is you get collaboration between many different vendors that otherwise compete in the marketplace. So they build nice solutions, but the problem is that some of those members have more weight, right? With all OpenStack programs, you have to somehow ensure that sponsorship will come in, and this is like the bane of the existence of any open source or open initiative, where you need to have members that will be bringing in money and support. Now, I'm most familiar with how OpenStack works as a foundation, and they have the same principles as some other foundations that I've seen, like for example Apache and Ceph has a similar sort of structure, where you have members who are corporate sponsors. There's even with OpenStack, there's even several levels of corporate sponsorship, right? And if you're making money off of that platform, off of OpenStack, you sort of have to contribute back to the community. And there's two ways to contribute. You can contribute monetarily by, you know, paying a yearly membership, or the other way is to actually contribute time and effort back, right? So if you have developers that are contributing to the OpenStack project, that will count towards your the time spent by them will count towards your sponsorship, right? For example, if you're a platinum member, you have to do both, right? You have to do both. You have to, you know, pay $100,000 a year, plus have like 10 people full-time working on OpenStack. I'm taking these numbers out of, you know, top of my head. It's not like that's how much you pay or whatever. There is a formula to get your gross income and then calculate how much you need to pay, and yeah, so this is kind of complicated. Anyway, where was I? Yes, so these foundations essentially they have to push their way forward, right? And platinum sponsors, I mean, if everybody was working in a system where everybody's goal was to push this system forward, this goal was to develop this solution in a certain direction, then of course everybody working for that same goal would mean that that solution would get developed really quickly and really well, right? But the problem is the members, the corporate sponsors, they don't all have the same goal, right? You have the corporate sponsors, which are small businesses like, you know, like myself, for example, who are interested in performing some kind of work and consulting and doing some kind of training or something like that. But then you've got corporate sponsors, like for example in OpenStack you've got corporate sponsors like VMware, for whom OpenStack was seen as a threat, and they bought a seat, a platinum membership, a seat for like $100,000, so that they have way more weight in how this platform is being developed. And back in 2013, 2014 when that happened, I don't know which year exactly, but back when that happened, everybody was like, so what, this is big. It was mostly a it was mostly an infrastructure project back then, right? So everybody was like, what, you've just let, you know, the lions into the cage with the chickens, right? Not even foxes, lions, like literally. And you know, VMware went in and they threw their weight around, and OpenStack started differentiating itself in a completely different way, right? They had a really good position back then to go into the enterprise market, build a product. Mirantis was working on Fuel, which was a graphical deployment system for OpenStack, and there was a really like big incentive for everybody to go off of VMware because of their expensive licensing, and jump into OpenStack because it gave a solution that not only would be open source but also would have the same features, the same or better features than VMware at that point in time, because it was all API addressable, it was all, you know, highly focused on automation. Not that VMware isn't, but you know, you needed several levels of licensing to get to that stage. So it wasn't just replacing hypervisor, it was replacing the basic stack that VMware had developed, right? It had much more powerful networking at that point, with the Open vSwitch, and of course then VMware bought that other company that was working on the solution and built NSX. Anyway, that was history. So yeah, I'm getting away from the main subject, which is, what do these open source communities, what do these initiatives really mean? Well, if the initiative has members who have equal rights and equal voting power, then the initiative will succeed much better. But if everybody is equal in the platform, then you don't get the big corporate sponsors, because the corporate sponsors are not going to be interested in it. So as far as the open cloud initiative, from my research, it's like a non-starter, right? Not only has it got the wrong name, it's poorly it's not even searchable on the internet. I mean, you can find information about the business itself, and yeah, the other two OCI projects, like Open Container Initiative and of course Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, are much more successful and much more searchable. If you search OCI, you'll find those two first. Now the other one is the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, right? So, the CNCF. The Cloud Native Computing Foundation is a really good idea in my opinion, because cloud native is the operating system of the future, right? Very, like, you can disagree with me, you can, you know, say no, it's not an operating system. Well, yes, it's not an operating system, but it's a platform where you execute your code. And what is an operating system? It's a platform where you execute your code, right? Also store data, and of course connect to other platforms through it. And then a unified approach to building solutions as cloud native solutions is definitely something that you want to have. You don't want to have the situation where you've got Windows and Linux, right? And the applications are not compatible with each other from a server point of view, right? I'm talking about servers here. I'm not talking about Mac OS and the desktop applications. That's not something that, you know, is worrying anybody in the cloud. It's not going to worry anybody that, oh, we need a Mac server. There's nothing, I mean, there is a Mac server, but there's really no enterprise applications that would work on the server side on the Mac OS, right? Well, there are, but again, I'm going into deep here. What you don't want to have is a Windows and Linux situation where you have two different operating systems and you have two different sets of applications, and that's very inefficient, right? Because you can do anything with Linux that you can do with Windows, and you can do almost things that you can do with Linux that you can do also. I mean, you can do anything with Windows that you can do in Linux, because Windows also has a Linux kernel in it, and of course you can emulate Windows on Linux, which again, not the best solutions. So when it comes to cloud computing, what you want to do is you want to unify stuff. You want to empower developers to be able to use multiple cloud solutions. Why do you want to empower them to use multiple cloud solutions? Well, because you want to ensure that they can have an easy migration path from your competition cloud provider, if nothing else, right? Or that when you're, saying, okay, you use our cloud the same way as you use their cloud, that means that there's very little learning curve to get into the new solution. And this is where, this is where AWS is right now putting a lot of effort in, is at giving developers options to access AWS in a much easier fashion, right? So in the past, you had the SDKs, right, the software development kits, and then you had the CLI, right, and then you had CloudFormation, and you'd have to sort of choose what you want. And the SDKs, are it's complicated to codify a large application with the SDK, right? It's a very low level system. I mean, even though there are libraries in there for every service and service calls, there still is like a ton of work, ton of lines of code needed to be written for every one of those. So now they're sort of simplifying with the cloud development kit, which gives you the ability to just do a specification document for application with your code, with the supported code, like with JavaScript, TypeScript, Python, etc., whatever is supported. And it makes your time to code an application much shorter. It ensures that you have the ability to really deliver complex applications through a language that is familiar to you, and through an approach that is essentially almost as if you're just writing your own native code. And it simplifies things, and in the background then it essentially extracts that code and creates an application for you. So in that respect, not that cloud development kit is something to do with the cloud native, sorry about this. Country life for you. Yeah, not that cloud native has anything to do with the cloud development kit. I just like the direction that they're going in, where they're making it simple, where they're reducing the learning curve. They're flattening the learning curve. We're all about flattening the curve nowadays, so AWS is flattening the learning curve. You could say the same thing about GCP, right, where the curve is already flat, because their approach is bring your code and just push it into the platform, right? They're not as heavily invested into the same kind of infrastructure orchestration like CloudFormation, and that's a benefit of being a platform service where you're already happy with your code, and then you just codify your services in that same way, right? You have to know that for example, there is quite a difference between these providers. Like AWS started as an infrastructure provider and then built platform services on top, and they come from an infrastructure mindset. They come with like very heavy site reliability principles in there, Whereas Microsoft and Google seem to be coming from a software provider where site reliability is not that much of an issue. You just use infrastructure, right? But when you become an infrastructure provider, then site reliability becomes a major issue. And I can talk about this in another video later, the sort of issues that I've identified with all cloud providers. I'm gonna sort of get into that, and yeah, we'll have a discussion on which things are odd in which platform and what I would do to change them. Anyway, going back to the Cloud Native Foundation. Cloud Native, as I said, is the approach to essentially unify the way you talk to all cloud, right, with a cloud native approach. And this is where it gets interesting. This is where you can get a lot of benefits from having a unified way of approaching all these platforms, right? If you have to learn each platform separately, and if you have to learn how to work with each platform separately, then it gets quite complicated. Whereas if you just have one way, but then you just adapt a few features to just match the platform services and the platform capabilities, then it can be much easier for you. So I'm all for the Cloud Native Foundation. But what I see when I come onto their website is there's prominent big logos from cloud providers there, and that makes me feel that their structure again is more of a, we've got large corporate sponsors, and those large corporate sponsors will have more say in it. So that is a consideration. We'll see which direction that goes into. Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. And as promised in my previous video, it's also time to do a little book giveaway. And today we're going to be giving away the SysOps Associate Certification Guide that I wrote last year. And I'm going to be sending it to the winner via FedEx anywhere in the world. No worries. What I will need from you is I will need you to comment in this video. Tell me what you think about, tell me your thoughts on the Open Cloud Initiative, on the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And yeah, I'm gonna choose a random winner like I always do with my random Lambda function. So that's pretty much it. I'm gonna leave this video up for about 10 days, and then I'm gonna announce the winner at some point in time. I'm saying about 10 days because my plans for the next couple of weeks are a little bit sort of unknown, so I don't know how much time I will have to even take any walks or to discuss any topics like this today. And of course, I really do want to grow this channel. I want to get more time to do these things, and right now all I need to do is get more subscribers in here, right? So if you have anybody else that's interested in cloud computing, if you know of anybody who would be interested in any of the topics, if you have you know, people who want to certify on these platforms, then definitely recommend the channel to them. I do want to have like real subscribers, real people who are interested in seeing this content, and it would really help me if you spread the word and if you support my channel by subscribing. And of course, just comment on their videos and tell me what you think about them. You know, I'm happy to hear that they're bad, that they're irrelevant, that they don't matter, or they're no good. And I'm happy to hear either side of the story. So that's what I have for you today, and thank you very much for being my audience. I will see you in the next video, I'm gonna try to ramp up some more videos now that I've sort of figured out some things, like for example how to ensure that my camera doesn't just record wind instead of me talking. All right, thank you very much, and it has been my pleasure to talk about this subject. I will see you in my next one, where I'm planning to discuss some more intricate details of cloud computing. I'm planning to do the next video as what I find odd about different cloud platforms, but we'll see how far I can get. Yeah, I still need to finish the certification series. Anyway, thank you very much for watching my videos, and please consider subscribing. Bye.